Ladies, gentlemen, and sword and shield users of all ages, when the monsters start a-rockin', don't come a-knockin', because I'm busy blocking and countering their faces, shoving an endless onslaught of sword strikes into their weakest parts, sliding under their biggest attacks, and then bonking them in the head to knock them out just to prove a point. Sword and shield is an absolutely top form in Monster Hunter Wilds. It is incredibly strong and incredibly fun, and today we're going to talk about the best build that I have come up with using the weapon as one of my three mains so far in Wilds, and it reaches some pretty ridiculous levels of strength when used to its absolute peak. That said, while today's focus is about the best offensive build you can get for Sword and Shield, that means we will be sacrificing a little bit of comfort or utility along the way to achieve more power, but not quite to the point of like a speedrunner's build. We won't be building around heroics or like ambush assuming a sub 3-minute average hunt time, or things like including corrupted mantle affinity because it just won't be active for most of your hunts. In other words, this is about as extreme as I would expect an average player would be willing to push Sword and Shield for more damage and more offense before it gets to the point of like speedrunning. Starting off then with your choice of weapons, for Sword and Shield, all roads lead to Artian weapons. Artian element weapons have more element capability than the crafted Sword and Shields. Artian raw is higher than the crafted Sword and Shields. The only place where the crafted ones went out a little bit is for the status weapons, and even then only for some of them. That said, this is a very one-size-fits-all build template for the weapon, which means that you can easily use it to its maximum effectiveness with an element weapon, a status weapon, or pure raw, depending on what you want. The best thing that you can do though is make one Artian weapon for each element, and then bring whichever weapon that your target is actually weak to as far as the element. Element hit zones on monsters are pretty bad right now at the start of Wilds with the current roster, which means fully element focused builds aren't doing very well, but doing a raw attack and affinity focused build that happens to have the correct element on the weapon is pretty much the best way to get bonus damage tacked on, especially for a fast attacking weapon like Sword and Shield, and especially because Artian weapons do not lose raw attack by making them as element weapons instead of just pure raw. You can also do statuses, there's nothing wrong with Blast Sword and Shield, a Paralysis, or Poison SNS, but they all have their place. However, element Sword and Shields will get you the most bang for your buck. That said, when making your Artian Sword and Shield, pick the element type that you want and then make it with 3 attack parts specifically. In the end, 3 attack parts always works out to higher damage overall in a build right now because most affinity comes from armor skills. You can overcap past 100% affinity from doing this, and if you do that, it's just a waste. Having a more than 100% crit chance does nothing. Whereas if you put pure attack onto your weapon, you can't overcap on attack because it's not a percentage, it's just a number that scales more. It just makes you stronger. So 3 attack focused base weapon parts with the element that you want to build it on. Then for your reinforcements, your goals are 3 attack boost rolls above all else, and if you get that, the rest of the rolls are at least workable around, though the ideal would be 4 attack boost and 1 sharpness boost for an extra 30 hits of white to work around. This is obviously a hammer that I'm showing for comparison, but it's the only one I've gotten this perfect set of rolls on to show as an example, but if you have those rolls, it would make your Artian weapon have 225 attack, 5% affinity, and then the element of your choosing in whatever amount that is. Then also a pile of white sharpness, and then 3 slots for your level 3 decorations. It's worth mentioning, if you don't yet have fully upgraded Artian weapons at the current point, it's not the end of the world by any means, because you can use crafted monster weapons. They're fine. They're about 5-10% less damage on average than the Artian weapons properly upgraded, but this is a guide to make the best Sword and Shield build. So I do of course have to make a point of how good the best options are, which are all the Artian Sword and Shields. Next up then, let's talk about our armor pieces of choice. We are running Gore Magala Beta helmet, gloves, waist, and legs, and then the Arkveld Beta chest. The main reasoning for this is that the Sword and Shield doesn't have any particularly special considerations for armor skills, so the best thing that you can do is work around the Gore Magala 4-set bonus and 2-set bonus, Black Eclipse. This gives you Frenzy when you come across a large monster. When you do enough damage with Frenzy debuff active, you will cleanse it, which gives you a buff for 90 seconds afterwards. When that duration ends, you get Frenzy again fresh, so it works in cycles. While you are actively inflicted with Frenzy, you get 10 bonus attack. While it is cleansed, you gain 15 bonus attack instead, and that's what the actual 4-set bonus does. Most of your actual hunting time will be spent with Frenzy Cleanse, so that's why I'll be treating it for the actual number calculating later on, and in combination with the set bonus itself, Gore Magala Armor also gives you a bit of the antivirus skill, which we fill out to all 3 ranks of decorations, and this gives us an extra 10% affinity when we cleanse Frenzy. It says it gives you 15%, in actuality it gives you 10%, the tooltip's just wrong. This means when Frenzy is cleansed, purely from these 3 skill ranks combined with these set bonus effects, we get 25% affinity and plus 15 raw attack, which is a very solid amount just from the actual set itself. As for the final armor piece being the Arkveld Beta chest, this is simply a really well put together armor piece with some weakness exploit on it and a good amount of decoration slots to fill. A very efficient piece. Weakness exploit gives us affinity when attacking weak monster spots, increased to even more affinity against wounds as well. For the sake of calculations, I'll be counting every hit as being against a weak spot, because if you are playing well, it just will be, but I won't count the bonus affinity from wounds at all due to how inconsistent that would be. It's worth noting as well as we move on that you can use gore magala alpha waste instead of the beta if you only have one antivirus decoration, but once you have two antivirus decorations, the beta waste gives you an extra 2-slot decoration for the build, which is just a touch more damage in the end. For our talisman, I've got the chain charm for 2 ranks of burst. Burst is slightly less valuable for the build than weakness exploit is, but it is our next highest value 3-slot consuming skill. With sword and shield, while in active combat, you'll be able to keep the full 5-hit bonus active from the skill for the vast majority of a hunt. As far as the talisman itself, you could use the weakness exploit charm for 2 ranks of weakness exploit instead of burst, depending on your decoration collection, which we'll mention later, as the important thing is just reaching the same skill ranks that I do on the overall list. We do also, of course, have the corrupted mantle in use, and that's because this is simply impossible to ignore right now. It is way too strong. We don't count the affinity that it gives us or the attack boost that it gives us in any math calculations, because I don't expect it to be active for a reasonable amount of your hunt timer, but as you will see in the footage, while this is working, spamming out our triangle or Y combo as frequently as possible does absolutely insane damage. That said, let's get into our decorations of choice then. In the weapon, you will always want a level 3 crit boost decoration for 3 ranks of the critical boost skill. We aim for super high crit chance in this build in general, and so the higher your crit chance is, the more valuable critical boost is as a skill, because it increases the damage of your critical hits. We then also 100% want 3 ranks of offensive guard. 3 ranks of this is 15% increase for 12 seconds after a well-timed block, which is even more forgiving of a window than the perfect block mechanic. Sword and shield can easily keep this at 100% uptime against any monster that's actively trying to hit you, so it is incredibly high value as a skill for us. It is just 15% attack. Then in my final slot, my recommendation for pure damage is crit boost 2, like I have here to finish off our crit boost skill to rank 5. Alternative options would be sharpness management, especially if your Artian weapon didn't get a sharpness roll. Plopping in a master's touch or razor sharp jewel is a good idea to make up for that. Otherwise, if you are unconfident with perfect guard, you can run an ironwell decoration for 3 ranks of the guard skill in the meantime. When you time a guard correctly, the actual guard skill basically doesn't matter, because perfect guard just counts as having full guard. So the highest output version of this build runs no actual guard skill and functions perfectly fine. I block attacks all the time, but because all of the blocks that I do count as perfect guards, that's why it works just fine. Having a guard decoration in is essentially training wheels. It punishes you less for having bad timing while you're learning, but you should absolutely get rid of this as soon as you get better with the guarding. The other thing worth mentioning here is the guard up skill as well, and this one's pretty odd with the way that the skills work in Wilds right now. This allows you to block otherwise unblockable attacks, however getting more than 1 rank of it is pretty wasteful, as it just lowers the damage that you receive while blocking these attacks. Only rank 1 unlocks the actual ability to block more attacks, so that's the one that you really want. So you'd be using a whole level 3 decoration slot for essentially the first rank of the skill that you're actually after, or at least you could use it like as a combo decoration with element or stuff like that, which is not that bad, but again, element attack is not very valuable right now. You'd much rather build around raw. So even past that, there are only even a handful of attacks in the entire game that require guard up as a skill to block. Most of them being grab or pin attacks, and once you realize what those are, you just learn to dodge them. So you really don't lose much by just not using guard up on most fights in Wilds. And so my main recommendation once again is just use this 3rd slot to finish those last 2 ranks of crit boost, simple as that. Moving on then, we have our armor set decorations as well. In here we have 4 different tenderizer decorations to finish off weakness exploit, get that to rank 5, including the 1 rank that comes by default on our chest piece. And again, I did mention earlier that you could use a weakness exploit charm instead of the burst charm that I've got on, and if you do that, you would instead want to replace 2 of the tenderizer decorations with 2 burst decorations, which would achieve the same overall list of skills. It's just another option to achieve the same skills depending on your actual decoration collection. We then also are going to be grabbing 3 maximum might decorations to stick in 2. Maximum might level 3 is 30% affinity while your stamina bar is full, and for a couple of seconds afterwards. It's got a little bit of leeway on the actual timing in Wilds, and enough leeway that for sword and shield, which only actively uses stamina when evading or using the backstep ability or when guarding imperfectly, it has high enough uptime to be extremely valuable. Even if you happen to lose the maximum might buff when doing a backstep to start perfect rush, you will still have maximum might come back up for the last few hits of perfect rush anyways, which are where the majority of the damage comes from for the combo, and then the rest of the moveset just gets to use maximum might for free on the one condition that you make a point of perfect guarding instead of regular guarding, and using sliding swipe to move around instead of evades. If you can get decent at that concept, maximum might becomes super reliable for the weapon, and a no-brainer choice to gain affinity. Then we have two antivirus decorations as well, Sane Jewels, and these are to finish off the antivirus skill that we talked about earlier. This will leave you with one empty 2-slot socket and an empty 1-slot socket as well. Especially for an average player, I'm a really big believer in the counterstrike skill, especially just one rank of it, because the first rank gives you 10 attack for a 30-second duration after you get properly knocked back by a monster's attack. The better you are at the game, the better you are with perfect guard and sliding swipe, the less often this will be active. But for most average players, it'll be active enough to get value out of filling it out for a singular rank of the skill. As for that remaining 1 slot for multiplayer, I would absolutely recommend the actual shockproof jewel for the shock absorber skill, just to make it so that you cannot flinch other players or be flinched by them when in multiplayer. When you're solo instead, you can just replace this with pretty much any bit of utility you can get from a 1-slot decoration. It's your choice. All that said then, our full roster of skills for the build is 5 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 handicraft that I got from a combo decoration with the offensive guard in my weapon, 5 weakness exploit, 3 constitution, 3 maximum might, 3 antivirus, 2 burst, 2 evade window, 1 counterstrike, 1 coalescence, 1 flinch free, 1 shock absorber, and then the gore magala forset bonus and the adrenaline group skill for reduced stamina use when at low health. With all that covered then, let's dive into the math of it all. Assuming perfect Artian rolls as laid out earlier, you would have 225 raw attack on the weapon itself. Offensive guard applies its percent bonus before any raw attack gained from skills or other buffs, so we multiply it by 1.15 to account for the 15% damage increase being consistently active. Plus 10 raw attack from level 2 burst at the full bonus, as you'll have it at the full bonus most often. Then we'll count plus 5 attack from counterstrike. It's plus 10 for the bonus, but let's assume that you get hit by the monster only once per minute, so the buff would be active 50% of the hunt time. This would put us at 273.75 attack. We are also counting Forset Gore Magala bonus as being active for the vast majority of the hunt, so let's just stick on that extra 15 raw for 288.75 attack. As for affinity, the weapon has 5% affinity as a base. We get 25% affinity from Cleansing Frenzy combined with the antivirus skill as well, which puts us to 30%. Weakness exploit is 30% affinity base when hitting weak spots, 20% bonus when hitting wounds. We will count the 30% as being consistent, but not the wounds because wounds are inconsistent, so let's say 60% affinity now. We then add in another 30% for maximum might, bringing us up to 90% affinity on average, and then when you hit a wound, you go up past 100%. When you use the corrupted mantle, you go up past 100%, but the rest of the time you'll just sit as a nice, pleasant 90%. With full 5 crit boost, a critical hit is a 40% damage increase, which is a 1.4 times damage multiplier. On average, we will get a critical hit 90% of the time, so the average increase to our damage from crits across a hunt is 36%, or a 1.36 times multiplier. 288.75 times 1.36 is 392.7, multiplied by 1.32 times for the white sharpness modifier, puts us at an end effective raw of 518.4 after rounding up a touch. This is an exceptionally high number compared to a lot of builds for effective raw numbers, and this is mostly due to offensive guard being a very consistent skill for sword and shield right now in wilds because of how it works, as that's just 15% increased base raw attack to build off of to begin with, just really powerful. Finally then, let's talk about actually playing this build, especially anything that helps enable it or that differs from standard sword and shield gameplay. There are 3 main things that I want to drive home here. The first is perfect guard. You can perfect guard by timing your guard as an attack is about to hit you. Or personally, I find it about 10 times easier to guard slightly earlier than that, and then do guard slash with right trigger and circle as an input when the attack is right about to hit you. Guard slash essentially refreshes the perfect guard window. It comes out near instantly, allowing you to reflexively press it almost like a purposeful parry button. This not only lets you activate offensive guard way more consistently, but it gives you more frequent access to counter slash as well, which is one of our most powerful individual moves, especially when you add add in the corrupted mantle. This mantle adds extra hits to every one of our triangle or Y attacks. While corrupted mantle is active, your best damage combo is triangle, 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 circle, just looping that on repeat while sticking like glue to the weakest parts of a monster, hitting it endlessly. And this is entirely because of corrupted mantle's extra ticks. As well, corrupted mantle does give a bonus hit to counter slash, so perfect guard and counter slash is even stronger while the mantle is on than it is when the mantle is off. Then third and finally, we are playing around maximum might, which means we don't want to use stamina more than possible. We want to make sure not to consume stamina in any way that is unnecessary. Getting used to that is basically just using sliding swipe a lot for your repositioning instead of rolling or evading, or sheathing and sprinting, just sliding swipe, as both of those things would drop maximum might, whereas sliding swipe does not cost stamina and does reposition you a fairly large amount and give you iframe, so you want to use it as much as possible instead of evading or sprinting. That pretty much does it for today, then everyone. Your guide to maximizing your damage for Sword and Shield in Monster Hunter Wilds right now to get you the most salacious slices, the slippiest slides, and let you carve up that monster into 1,000 equally sized pieces, one cut at a time. I hope you've enjoyed this then, and hopefully it helps you improve your hunts as well. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.